So many of us in the media, sports media world, certainly those who do a show like this one, make things so difficult. We overthink things sometimes. Honestly, I think we sometimes overthink things.
Factual.
We try not to. We try to keep it simple. Like, for instance, when we're talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers and, like, what are they thinking about with Mike Tomlin? Would Mike Tomlin consider leaving? What's going on with the quarterback situation? We're, like, sitting here. We make it so difficult. We should keep it simple. We should just say, ask Gerry Dulac what the hell's going on. And here he is, back here on the Rich Eisen Show, a man who's been covering the Steelers forever and a day, our friend from Western PA, Gerry Dulac. Good to see you again, Gerry. How are you?
Well, Rich, always good seeing you. I put my Harvey Specter tie on for you today.
Yes, I like it.
I hope you don't think I didn't keep it simple. I got overdressed. I actually have to do TV after this.
That's what I was figuring. I'm just glad everyone's okay in your life because you're not going somewhere else after this. But all good, Gerry. So let's just jump into why did the Steelers finish 0-5? What's your estimation as to why a team that was so promising 4-2 under Fields and then 6-1 under Russell Wilson to make him 10-3, finished 10-8?
Well, Rich, part of it was the competition, and that's no excuse. That's the reality. And the reality of that is when you play the Eagles and the Ravens and the Chiefs, the Steelers aren't good enough to just line up and beat those guys. They're a turnover-reliant team. Mike Tomlin, throughout the season, he doesn't use that exact expression, but he talks and laments the lack of turnovers, the lack of missed opportunities. And you do that when you're just not able to stand up and play with the big boys. And that's been the biggest thing. The other thing, the defense has been a terrible disappointment in this stretch. You allow 299 yards to the Ravens in the postseason. And, Rich, I hark back to the days of James Farrior and Casey Hampton and Brett Kiesel. If Derrick Henry ran for 162 yards 3 weeks later against those guys, he'd be lucky to get 30. Because their purpose would be, he ain't going to do that to us again. And what does he do? He comes back with 186. To me, that's unconscionable. I don't know how that happens, but I think that's just, somewhat kind of symptomatic and emblematic of what's happened with the defense here in the second half of the season. And their inability to stop the run, their defensive line has been exposed. Thank goodness they have Cam Hayward. And that is the number one unit on this team, Rich, that has to be, revamped and rebuilt.
Well, I got number 92, Gerry. You know what I mean? Or I should say number 90 as well. So it's interesting you go defense because I'm sure most Steeler fans would say offensively they disappeared. Russ disappeared. The quarterback room wasn't good enough at the end of the day, Gerry.
Yeah, Rich, I'm not letting them off the hook either because they failed to score more than 17 points for the last 5 games. You have to go back to Chuck Noll's first season to find an instance where they failed to score more than 17 points in 5 straight games. And so, yeah, I'm certainly not letting them off the hook. They have, despite the fact they want to run the ball, it does not control the game. And I'm not going to let Russell Wilson off the hook, but I will tell you, the offensive line, I think the injuries finally caught up with them. You're starting 2 rookies, and while Zach Frazier's been outstanding, I don't want to say they hit the rookie wall, but they had issues with protection. And of course, the other thing too, Rich, their wide receiver room was it just showed up what they feared all year, and as they don't have anybody beside George Pickens, and they don't have anybody who can get open in the middle of the field. And you add all those things together, and you saw a disconnect in the passing game for sure, and the offense as a whole.
All right, so then let's get to the larger picture then, Gerry Dulac. How is everything that you just laid out landing in the house of the Rooneys?
Well, I'm sure it's not landing very well. I will tell you, Rich, only because you mentioned this at the start and everybody wants to know, but I think, I kind of laid that to rest on Monday. The Steelers have no plans to move on from Mike Tomlin. Look, they gave him a 3-year, $50 million extension in June, and they're not just going to walk away from that. And when they did that, that was just another indication that Mike Tomlin and the Steelers will part ways only when Mike Tomlin wants to. And the Steelers apparently and obviously just aren't going to do that. So for those people, especially around here, Rich, I'm sure you hear it nationally, but locally, it's the cries among the fan base. It's time to move on. It's time to get away from Mike Tomlin. Well, that's not going to happen. This idea that the Steelers would trade him Rich, you and I have a better opportunity to be the Steelers head coach than the Steelers ever trading Mike Tomlin. That's not going to happen either. But when you look at all the moves they made in the offseason, after Art Rooney II issued that declaration that it's, quote, time to start winning playoff games. And now what? That's why you brought in Russell Wilson. That's why you gave Patrick Queen the biggest free agent contract you've ever done. That's why they moved on from Kenny Pickett and Deontay Johnson, 2 starters, made a trade for Justin Fields. All the moves they made were designed to, hey, let's at least win a playoff game and see if we can't get this back on track. And not only are they right back where they were last year, Rich, to me, they're farther back than where they were last year. So
then what do they do, Gerry?
Good question, Rich. This is the 3rd year out of 4 that they are going into the offseason with, uncertainty at quarterback. And, I think you've heard me say when we've talked before that when Russell Wilson and the Steelers agreed on a contract in the spring, that the intention on both sides was to do a longer-term deal. Now, I don't know how that's going to play out now. I don't know if the same feeling exists among the Steelers. You have 2 running backs who aren't under contract, and I doubt both of them will be back. And if I had to bet, I'm going to guess, despite 4 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons, they might have to move on from Najee Harris. They can put the franchise tag on him, and that's going to cost them $13 to $14 million. I don't think they want to do that. And so, yeah, there's a lot of questions here that need to be answered. And of course, the big one is going to start at quarterback. But they to say they have to revamp everything. The problem is they brought in a lot of veterans last year. You don't want to keep doing that, Rich, because all of a sudden your roster gets older. And a lot of their backups are older. They don't have a dynamic person they can bring off the bench, both offensively and defensively, that you think, okay, this guy's going to be good in 2025 and, maybe a Pro Bowler in 2026. They don't have that kind of guy, especially on offense. And so there's, they need to go find a running back who could get to the edge. And I think you will see them in free agency make some kind of deal or sign a player in free agency, a number 2 receiver, or eventually who will be number 1, like they tried during the regular season and failed.
Gerry Dulac here on the Rich Eisen Show. So listen, if somebody gives me a 3-year, $50 million contract, I don't want to go anywhere. That's number 1. Number 2, I do look around the quarterback room, and I do look around what other teams do have, and I do see Andy Reid leaving the state of Pennsylvania to find a new spot and, reimagining his entire career after the age of 50. You know what I'm saying? Like I can see what else could possibly be out there if I'm Mike Tomlin. Does he not think that at all? Does he not sit there and think that at all, Gerry? Do you?
Rich, I can't speak to that. But I wouldn't sit here and say he doesn't think that. I mean, the kind of flip side of that is, this will be his 19th year. He's closing in on Chuck Noll territory, believe that or not. Chuck Noll was here 23 years. At some point, to me, the Steelers have to ask themselves, this has nothing to do with whether Mike Tomlin's a good coach. That's not even debatable. We know his credentials and, likely a Hall of Fame coach one day, but that's not an issue here. What is at issue is the same things keep happening. These late season swoons, failures to win a playoff game. That's 6 in a row. It ties the Dolphins for the most among active teams. 8 years without a playoff win, going back to 1972, their first playoff victory. That's the longest drought they've ever had. And it's getting blown out in these games, Rich, 63-0. They've been outscored in the first quarter of the past 5 playoff games. I mean, they are going into these games and playing as though they are not prepared. Use whatever word or expression you want, that they were flat, that they were out-coached, out-schemed, whatever the case may be, whatever it is. And I can't sit here and put a finger on it, but whatever it is, it keeps happening. And how long are you content to let it keep happening? And that, to me, is the question the Steelers need to ask, although I'm not sure. They might have discussions about it. I'm not sure that's a serious question that will be addressed, though.
And I guess on behalf of all fans that would love an answer, why not? Why take a look. Why not take a look at the last 8 years and say it's just not working? If you're either one, and I know Tomlin said this week that, he understands the frustration because he shares it, and that makes complete sense. And he never strikes me as a guy who would just throw his hands up and say, it's just not working here. Like he just wants to dig in deeper and figure out the answer to it. But you look at it, I mean, is Russell Wilson a year older going to be the answer? Is Sam Darnold the answer? If get Aaron Rodgers at age 42, if he wants to keep playing, is he the answer? Because that's the first order of business. Because if the one way to make sure that Derrick Henry doesn't run for all those yards is if you have a lead, right? That the Ravens might not just keep on loading up Lightning McQueen and have him go down the highway. Jerry, right? I mean, like that's what I'm thinking. So what's the answer to all that?
Yeah, and obviously quarterback, most position, not only in the sport, it is most important position in sports, and that you have to figure out, okay, do we want to go forward this way? I think there's a little disconnect between Russell Wilson and the offensive coordinator, the way he wants to play and the way Russell Wilson would like to play. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that's the reason for their skid here at the end, because it worked for a good while. For 7 games, it worked very well. They were averaging 28, nearly 29 points with Russell Wilson for that 7-game stretch. All of a sudden, they had an offense, or so we thought, that was the equal of the defense, that could bail the defense out if they had to, as they did in that December 1st game in Cincinnati when they put up 44 points and 520 yards. But did the Steelers, did the offensive scheme, did the formations, did they become predictable? Did their personnel groupings become predictable and start tipping off what they were going to do? Those are all things that were addressed and talked about because it was happening. And so, again, it's hard to put a finger on what it is, but no question, quarterback, number one priority with every football team. That's why teams try to unearth and find the guy that's going to be the guy to take them through the postseason. And the Steelers thought, okay, let's bring in Russell Wilson and see if we can get a playoff victory and maybe get back on the right track. And it didn't happen. And I'm not saying they're just going to give up on it, but it didn't happen. And so now what's the next step? And I can't sit here and tell you for certain what that's going to be, but I'm going to guess that they probably will bring back Justin Fields unless some other team makes him a better offer as a free agent.
That's what I was going to ask him before I let you go, Gerry Dulac. Crystal ball it as we're sitting here the Thursday before divisional playoff weekend. Mike Tomlin is the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers week 1 in 2025. Yes, correct?
Oh, yes, correct. Yes.
Okay. Arthur Smith, is he the offensive coordinator first week of 2025?
Jerry? Yeah, I think so. I don't think the Steelers have any chance, any inclination to move on from Rich. I think, with all due respect to Arthur, who I like a great deal and I think is a fantastic coordinator, I think when you are not successful in your very first stint as a head coach, you have a hard time getting a second opportunity as a head coach. So I say that, and again, with all due respect, I don't think it's going to work out for Arthur. I don't know that. I hope it does because I like him a great deal. But so I think he will be back.
The starting running back of the Pittsburgh Steelers, is he currently on the roster?
I think Jaylen Warren will be back as a restricted free agent.
Okay.
They can keep him at a much cheaper price. I'm not so sure about Najee Harris, but I will tell you, Rich, one of the priorities in the draft will be finding a running back who can get to the edge. They don't have that kind of guy. They have 2, plotters inside the tackles kind of guys. And so they need to find a guy who can get on the edge to kind of, supplement what they already have. And
I'm not going to go macro on this last one. I'm going to ask for a name. And if you're right, you nailed it. And if you didn't, I'm the idiot who was asking you this question the Thursday before divisional playoff weekend, Jerry, not you. So the starting quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers week 1 in 2025 is named who?
For right now, Rich, I will say Justin Fields.
Mm-hmm. And now outside,
but don't hold me to that.
Not,
please.
Of course not. I'm asking you now. I mean, it's the middle of January. So outside the organization, take your shot. Who do you think that would be brought in?
I could tell you it won't be Aaron Rodgers. They have no interest in doing that. Sam Darnold would be a good landing spot. We did not see the best of Sam Darnold the last 2 games. I don't know if that's going to hurt him or not. It won't be Kirk Cousins. They don't need to go that direction either. And they're not going to take one in the draft. They're not in position to do that. So, plus, I'm not sure that's a great year for that anyhow. But so if I had to throw a name, to me, it would come down to, do they want to come back with Russell Wilson, or do they want to sign a Sam Darnold? And that's what it's basically going to come down to.
Jerry, thanks for the call. Greatly appreciate it. You're done with Suits, right? You zipped through that, right?
Yeah,
Over?
I'm done with that a long time ago, Rich. In fact, I've even thought about watching it again. I'm curious to see what Suits LA is, but I'm sure it'll be a big disappointment to us original Suits guys.
No. Never know. Have you watched Landman?
That's right. You never know.
Did you watch Landman? Have you watched Landman, Jerry?
You know what? I started one episode, and I have to tell you, I didn't continue, but I hear a lot of good things.
No.
Pick it back up?
No. Pick it back up, Jerry. It's great. It's great acting, great writing, great drama. And how do I put this? Part of the reason why you might have enjoyed watching Suits, there's some similar aspects to Landman, Jerry.
Rich, I was a big Peaky Blinders guy. Have you watched that start to finish? You need to.
I need captions to do that.
Well, you're right about that. I did too. But it is really good. It is really good.
Jerry, appreciate the time. Look for more of our calls as always. Thanks for the 2 cents. You got it.
Stay safe there, my friend.
You got it. That's Gerry Dulac from Pittsburgh, PA, radio network host, television, writing. He talks about the Steelers in so many different ways. There you go. Tomlin's not going anywhere. Arthur Smith's probably not going anywhere. Russell Wilson might go somewhere. Najee Harris might go somewhere. But for Steelers fans who are like, I want radical change.
No change.
I don't think it's coming. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.